Convicted felon Donald Trump's war on the judiciary wages on. Instead of doing the thing that most normal and sane litigants do, which is take an appeal if you get an adverse ruling, or, maybe privately complain about the judge, what ends up happening here is Donald Trump has weaponized the federal government and specifically the Department of Justice to go after judges that have entered or ruled in a way that is adverse or in opposition to what he is seeking. Because, God forbid any judges maintain the rule of law and provide a defense to the totally insane and illegal and unconstitutional moves that are being done by this administration. So you will recall here at the Katie Phang News Channel a few weeks ago, we covered the fact that there was the chief judge in the DC circuit. His name is James Boasberg. You know him. He's the judge who ordered those planes to be turned around before they made it to CCOT. And of course, the Trump administration gave him the big middle finger. He's actually the judge as well, that DOJ whistleblower, Arez Ravini, that he's the one who actually was saying to his cohorts and his colleagues in the Department of Homeland Security, ICE, et cetera, and the DOJ, that the judge was ordering one thing. And of course, the DOJ turned around and did something else pursuant to Emile Beauvais' orders when Beauvais said, we're going to tell these federal judges, fuck you, when it comes to what they have ordered the federal government to do. So Judge Boasberg, back in March, was attending a judicial conference. So let's stop for a second and talk about judicial conferences, because they are a gathering on I think they happen twice a year. And during these judicial conferences, the judges that come from specific circuits across the United States get together. And in this instance, the chief judge of the United States Supreme Court, which is John Roberts, is present. And they're dealing with administrative issues, but it's also a session for them to be able to convene, to be able to talk about the issues that are being that they are confronting in their particular jurisdictions. And it is not open to the public, and it's definitely not something that's supposed to be, done with the public being invited to participate. And during this judicial conference in March, Judge Boasberg expressed his concerns, which he's entitled to do, by the way, that the Trump administration is being unlawful and that the Trump administration will unlawfully disobey court orders. And how would he know? Well, obviously, because he had been experiencing that with the Trump administration. And look, the guy was clearly prescient. He knew exactly what this administration was going to be doing, not only, by the way, dealing with his stuff, but other federal judges across the United States have been dealing with unlawful disobedience and contempt by the Trump administration. So what has happened now? Well, Pamela Bondi has now filed a misconduct complaint about Judge Boasberg. We have a copy of it here. It is a 5-page complaint, and it has been sent to the chief judge in the Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, Judge Srinivasan, who is the person who, gets all of these complaints about federal judges. And according to this complaint that has been submitted by Chad Mizell, the chief of staff of the Office of the Attorney General. And we're going to get into Chad, and he fits his name, by the way. And we're going to get into Chad in just a second. According to this 5-page complaint, Judge Boasberg violated rules of judicial conduct when he made the statements that he did about Donald Trump to the Chief Justice of the U.S. and other federal judges that were present at this judicial conference. Now, I'm actually not even going to read with a level of specificity about what's in this complaint, because it is such a gratuitous, it's really worth it to rip it up. But I just want to give you some of the highlights of the hypocrisy that's located in this complaint so that you understand exactly strategically what this Trump administration is doing when it is going after the members of the judiciary, which, yes, is a telltale sign of an authoritarian government. Can you have a government if it's authoritarian? Anyway, alrighty. So they're claiming that Judge Boasberg attempted to improperly influence Chief Justice Roberts and the other federal judges by stating his belief. And by the way, it is clear he was expressing his belief that the Trump administration would disregard rulings of federal courts and would trigger a constitutional crisis. I mean, I don't know who they're kidding here. Pamela Joe, hey, McFly, we are in the midst of a constitutional crisis when you're disregarding judicial orders from the judiciary, a co-equal branch of government. So they're claiming that Judge Boasberg's words and deeds violated codes of conduct for United States judges, has eroded public confidence in judicial neutrality, and they're trying to get a formal investigation launched against Judge Boasberg. What's insane about this complaint, and it is such a gaslighting moment to read this, is that the Trump administration claims that they have complied with, quote, all court orders. Gaslighting 101. The pure definition of gaslighting is happening right now with this administration to suggest that they have complied with all court orders. It's not just Judge Boasberg. We have other judges, federal and otherwise, that have said that the Trump administration has not been abiding and complying with judges' orders. Now, again, I'm not going to get into this because this is just disgusting, but I will say this. This complaint is premised ostensibly on a Federalist article that I covered with you here at the Katie Phang News Channel a few weeks ago that was written by a hyper-partisan author. I won't even call her a journalist. She's a law professor, I think. And she wasn't present. She wasn't present at this judicial conference. She was not at this meeting. And so when they're citing to things that Judge Boasberg said and they're putting it in quotes, they're not making it clear whether or not it's actually a transcription of what was said by Judge Boasberg, somebody who was present who decided to narc on Judge Boasberg but gave their summary of what he said. Were they relying upon, for purposes of this complaint, the Federalist article? I mean, the Federalist is, by definition, its name to suggest to you exactly what its intent is. And I don't know if it's a publication, but here's the thing. It's like you cannot cite to that, but they don't make it clear here, and intentionally so. Here's what's crazy what's also crazy. They're saying that Judge Boasberg degraded public confidence in the integrity of the judiciary by his public comments that he made. How about the fact that the public already has its belief in the confidence of the integrity of the judiciary? It's already been diminishing. It is empirically proven over years that polling has suggested that the public just doesn't believe in the integrity of the judiciary, more specifically in the Supreme Court of the United States. So the irony doesn't escape me that these comments are being directed to the Chief Justice of the judicial body that is a hyper-partisan ultra MAGA 6 that consistently is destroying our United States Constitution and ruining lives of hundreds of thousands of American people. But the Trump administration thinks that Judge Boasberg expressing his concern about a potential constitutional crisis because of disobedience by the executive branch, like that in some way is going to undermine public confidence in the integrity of the judiciary. The complaint goes on to cite to a recent interview by Berkeley law professor John Yoo, who actually used the verb entrap. According to this interview, John Yoo said that the judge, Boasberg, was trying to entrap the Chief Justice of the United States to get him on the record and join him to almost approve what he's doing to spark this fight with President Trump. Do I need to remind you that John Yoo was the architect of the torture memos? Do you remember those? The torture memos? So John Yoo, when he was working for the federal government, was the architect of the torture memos. And remember, this is the post 9/11 detainees and their treatment while being held by the United States and the justification to be able to use torture to be able to elicit information from them. I'm not asking you for your opinion, folks, on whether or not you agree with waterboarding for detainees. What I am telling you, though, is it's the pot and the kettle hanging out together, and I guess having an entire freaking family here, because John Yoo, of all people, I mean, clearly he's incentivized to think that any judge that is ruling against bad conduct with a detainee must be a bad judge, right? I mean, please, let's consider the sources here. Then this complaint criticizes the way that Judge Boasberg ran his courtroom after he made these statements, but it's the way he ran his courtroom. They're complaining about how the DOJ didn't get enough time to respond, or the federal government only got 48 hours and they had to go to a hearing. I mean, stop your whining. Do your freaking job. I mean, it's just a whiny kind of piece of paper here. But here's what's crazy too. So the relief that's being requested in this complaint against Judge Boasberg is the following. They want to refer this complaint to a special investigative committee. So let me think here. With all of these federal judges that were present, including the Chief Justice, are we going to do an investigation where we're going to interview and call in and ask questions of these, bring in these federal judges and ask them all these questions, including the Chief Justice, and say, hey, was this said and was this intent and what do you think this is? Sure. They want to reassign any Trump cases relating to this immigration issue vis-a-vis all of these detainees being illegally, unconstitutionally sent to CCOT in El Salvador. They want to reassign those to another judge. And then they say here, upon substantiation, impose appropriate disciplinary action, including a public reprimand. Stop. So we want to drag Judge Boasberg to the public square? Are we going to put him in shackles? And are we going to sit there and are we going to whip him, pillory him and whip him? Is that what we're going to do? Refer Judge Boasberg to the judicial conference, the conference that he was attending as the chief judge of the DC circuit. Refer him to the judicial conference for consideration of impeachment-related recommendations if the committee finds willful misconduct. We're going to talk about impeachment in just a second. Respectfully, no respect really, signed Chad Mizell. Chad Mizell was the acting general counsel at the Department of Homeland Security. In Trump term 1.0, he was a huge defender of Trump's immigration policies that were, many of which were deemed to be unconstitutional and illegal. He's been defined and declared by convicted felon Donald Trump as being a, quote, MAGA warrior. I've mentioned him before. He goes to court and makes a lot of outrageous representations, some of which are found not to be credible. He's the one with the federal judge wife who was appointed by Trump, who the American Bar Association said she was not qualified to sit as a judge. And he is a self-professed, apparently, ally to Stephen Miller. So that's the complaint. But let's talk about what's happening here, because timing is always everything. Just last week, Judge Boasberg made it clear, especially in light of the fact that we have Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who's been brought back. The prisoner swap happened where Venezuelans were taken from CCOT and delivered back to Venezuela. They've come forward. I covered this on this channel, that one of them, for example, Never Rangel, Venezuelan, he's a barber. He was one of the people that was sent to CCOT. He was tortured and abused, and the federal government, he's now making a claim under the Federal Tort Claims Act against him. Now that all of this has come to light and all this evidence has come forward from Arez Riavini, the whistleblower from the DOJ, that shows that there was the intent to not obey Judge Boasberg's orders, Judge Boasberg just last week said that he's going to pursue the contempt sanctions against the administration. Just last week, he makes that declaration in court, and oh my gosh, what happens? Complaint against Judge Boasberg. We are not dumb and blind as Americans. We know exactly what is happening here. This is retaliation, and it's another form of retaliation and vindictive conduct by the Trump administration because, one, they don't like Judge Boasberg because he told them off. Two, they don't like Judge Boasberg because he's a defender of the rule of law. And three, they don't like Judge Boasberg because he's about to expose this administration for its egregious contempt of court. So they're trying to discredit this judge, and they're actively calling for his impeachment. And we know Trump called for Judge Boasberg's impeachment months ago. Back in March when he got this ruling, when Trump administration got this ruling that was adverse to them about having to turn around these planes and bring them back to the United States. So apparently, there were lawmakers that were in attendance at this judicial conference, including Susan Collins, Dick Durbin, Sheldon Whitehouse, Jamie Raskin, Hank Johnson, and Steny Hoyer. It is unclear, according to this reporting, that the lawmakers heard what Judge Boasberg said. I'm going to say that didn't happen. I'm going to go on a limb and say the Congress people did not hear that being said by Judge Boasberg. Now, the chief judge, I told you, is Judge Srinivasan, who is the chief judge of the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, and he is the one who oversees all of the judicial disciplinary issues that fall within that circuit, right? So that's the reason why Judge Srinivasan has this judicial complaint. But I want to remind all of you as well. According to Politico, it's incredible reporting always by Kyle Cheney and Josh Gersten. Chad Mizell filed a complaint early this year against District Court Judge Anna Reyes because she, as you recall, took the Trump administration to task about the transgender military ban. So again, a judge that does something that the administration doesn't like, they filed a complaint against her. Then in March, the Justice Department actually asked the DC Circuit to remove Boasberg from the case, put another judge on. The appeals court never acted on that because the case ended up getting kicked out of the DC area for the detainees' purposes. And that's a whole other ruling that ended up happening. And then, again, as I said, after the ruling by Judge Boasberg in March, Trump actually called for him to be impeached, labeling Boasberg, quote, a troublemaker and an agitator. And then now we also know, because I covered it here, the Department of Justice has sued the entire federal bench in the state of Maryland because of a standing order that was entered that allowed detainees that have been rounded up by the Trump administration at least 48 hours to be able to have notice prior to being removed from the United States, and also to give them the chance to be able to contact their counsel or to get counsel. And we also know that just a few days ago, this administration went after the judges, the federal judges in New Jersey over what? The Alina Habba drama, when those judges voted not to keep Alina Habba as the United States attorney in New Jersey and instead picked her lieutenant, we'll call, the first assistant United States attorney instead of Alina Habba, and Habba being petty and a mean girl, enlisted Pamela Jo Todd Blanche in the Department of Justice to be able to complain about the wisdom of federal judges collectively saying, we don't want Alina Habba in our jurisdiction. I mean, look, it is a campaign of intimidation. It is a campaign of retaliation. It's a campaign of vindictive, petty, dumb behavior, but it has very real consequences. Why? Because the litigants that are going to court, that are hoping to get judges that understand that the rule of law must prevail over any personal beliefs, that the rule of law must be the guiding North Star when you are in court. When the Trump administration is putting its thumb on the scale in this intimidation tactic way of filing complaints, seeking impeachment, trying to basically pit judges against judges, and basically calling into question the credibility of a judge publicly. I mean, this is really the Trump administration lying down, spitting up in the air when they're making accusations about this judge. What do we always say here? Every accusation is a confession with Republicans, and especially with this administration that is led by a convicted felon. Spread this video. Let people know that when a judge does the right thing, the Trump administration's response isn't just, let me appeal it. Let me actually take the legal steps in the procedures to be able to try to get a result that I want. This is the type of bullshit tactics that this administration has decided to deploy. Be mad, be outraged, demand accountability. I will see you on the other side. Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.